This is where you really need to ramp up your prepping. I hope that this convinces you what I'm about to show you right now, that our days are limited. Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Now ladies and gentlemen, when I opened up this article, I told myself there's got to be something really wrong going on. Because when I find myself agreeing with what this gentleman here is saying, there's really got to be something wrong going on. For those of you that don't know, this is Jamie Dimon. He's the CEO of JP Morgan, a bank that in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, and really not only in my opinion, there are court records that show that JP Morgan has been caught doing so many crimes and have been fined for committing felonies in the financial markets over the last decade or so or more, that I can't believe that I'm finding myself agreeing with what this gentleman here is saying. And calling him a gentleman, really, ladies and gentlemen, is being very kind. However, I found in between the lines why he is saying what he is saying. It's just a sneaky way of trying to push us towards more global governance than what there is now. And it says here, it would be detrimental to a lot of companies. Jamie Dimon slams Biden's tax plan. And he's not slamming his tax plan at all, ladies and gentlemen. But I want to show you what he's saying and what parts I agree with. But I want to show you something that is even more important that tells me, ladies and gentlemen, and this is, to me, in a way, a little bit scary. Not so much because I'm a prepper. But the prepping part of this video is going to come on the second half. But this is the premise to that second half so that we can ease into it and segue in a way that you'll understand where I'm coming from. Here, JP Morgan says that President Biden's tax plan, which would raise the current corporate tax from 21% to 28%, arguing that it would result in capital flight out of the United States. And that is very true, ladies and gentlemen. If you have a company and the United States tax plan says that you're going to pay a lot more, what would you do? Would you be willing to move that company somewhere else so that you can at least stay afloat and stay in business? Or will you be willing to go ahead and pass down that extra cost and taxes to your consumers? Those are really the only other two choices that you will have. It's either to move or to go ahead and pass down the extra taxes to your consumers. Because if you don't, then you'll probably find yourself going out of business. So I agree with him here. However, let's get to the part where I think most people would miss what he is really trying to say. He says here the tax increase is actually 4 times what the tax decrease was from 2017. Right? And now he says, this is the part, ladies and gentlemen, where I tell you, you need to read between the line. He says, you all know the phrase, the devil is in the details. Well, details here are all that matter, not the top line of 28%. And then he goes on to say, if you want to have a healthy, growing, competitive America against the rest of the world, you need a global, let me say that again, you need a global competitive tax rate. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is where he's getting at. So when I looked at this and I said, wow, I actually agree with this person. No, it's just a sneaky way of him supporting what Janet Yellen is trying to do with the countries that are associated with the IMF, which is to have a global corporate tax where companies will be forced to pay the same amount of taxes no matter where they go. Ladies and gentlemen, what is that? Do you call that a free market? That is not a free market. That is just another step towards global governance. Right now, if you are an American citizen and you go to another country and you make money in that country, you have to pay taxes for the U.S. and that country if they charge you taxes. There's nowhere you can go to hide because the U.S. has pretty much threatened every bank in the world, telling them if you don't report what this person here, this American citizen, has in his bank account to us, then you're going to be in trouble with us. We're going to kick you off the SWIFT system. So now that they've done it to people, now they want to do it to corporations. Why? Because they want to have 100% central power. And what happens every time that an empire goes down this road, ladies and gentlemen? It collapses. This empire that is called the United States of America, it will eventually collapse because they are taking so much control over everyone's lives that it will eventually collapse. And let me show you what the scary part is, where you need to ramp up your prepping right now. This is where you really need to ramp up your prepping. I hope that this convinces you what I'm about to show you right now, that our days are limited. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the U.S. debt clock. Okay, right now we're at about $28.3 trillion, just national debt. Not talking about any of the other things, right? Not talking about our unfunded liabilities or anything like that, but just our national debt. we're at $28.3 trillion, 2021. Right now, our tax revenue is $3.5 trillion. Okay, and we want to take a look here, the U.S. M2 money supply, which is pretty much all of the money that is liquid within the economy, meaning that if you want to have access to this money, you can have access to it and then go out there and spend it in the economy, right? So these are all the dollars that are floating around the economy in different forms, i.e. savings, checkings, pension plans, IRAs, things like that. $20.6 trillion, ladies and gentlemen. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fast forward 3.5 years to 2025. Now take a look at this. Now this is on the back of what the president is planning to do by adding an additional $6 trillion to our debt. All right, he's going to add an additional $6 trillion to our debt to spend on whatever it is. It says here, taken together, that would add up to $5.9 trillion, not including the interest payments on the national debt. Okay, so now that we know that we have 28.3 trillion, 3.5 trillion on tax revenue, and 20 trillion in the U.S. money supply, let's go ahead and fast forward to 2025. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we passed through the wormhole and we're now in 2025. Look at our national debt, 50.3 trillion, ladies and gentlemen. That is 22 trillion more than what it is now. 22 trillion more than what it is now, almost double. Take a look at our M2 money supply. This here is the very scary part, because the national debt, the higher it goes, the more that we have to pay in interest, which means what? It means one of two things. The more that we're going to get taxed, and or the more debt that the government has to get into just to pay their interest payment. So it's kind of like a snake eating its own tail, right? It's a snake eating itself. Because the higher that this goes, the higher the interest payments, the more we'll have to pay in taxes, and or the more treasury bonds that the U.S. is going to have to sell in order to borrow money to be able to pay the interest, which will make this dollar amount go even higher. But this is the scary part, ladies and gentlemen. $49 trillion M2 money supply. Right now, the M2 money supply is about $20 trillion. This is 150% more money in the economy than what we have now. Just in 3 years, 3.5 years, we're going to have more than 150% more money floating around the economy than we have now. What do you think that is going to do to the price of things? No, ladies and gentlemen, that doesn't mean that the price of things are going to go up by 1.5 times. It's going to be multiples. That's where this video is very important for preppers, for us preppers. It's important for everyone. Why? Because we know now that this is being planned for 2025. Now, this is very accurate, ladies and gentlemen. I remember back in 2015, I think it was, I took a look at this to see where we were going to be at in 2020. And it said something like $27 trillion. And I was like, there's no way. Now, let's take a look back and see what 2015 was. Well, let's see. 2016 is the latest. We were at $19 trillion in 2016. So I remember looking at this at, I think, 2015, seeing what it was going to be in 2020. And I was like, there's no way we're going to be at $27 trillion on 2020. And what happened, ladies and gentlemen? Last year in 2020, we were at $27 trillion. And I was in awe at how accurate this is. I believe that this is very accurate. I believe that in 2025, we will have more than 150% the money supply rotating and floating around the economy as we do now. And I believe that this is going to increase the price of everything dramatically. Not by 1.5 times, but dramatically. This is the time that we need to prepare. This is the time that we need to take whatever extra funds we have and prepare. I'm not a financial advisor, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you that. But let me tell you this. I am not going to leave the bulk of my wealth in a bank where it can get scorched up by what I like to call the inferno of inflation. Inflation does one thing and only one thing, ladies and gentlemen, and that is it steals your purchasing power. It steals the wealth that you earned in the past, have in the present, and will have in the future. We need to prepare now because the price of things are going to continue to escalate to a point where the average person, the average family, will not be able to afford to eat. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how empires die. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I do have a live stream today at 2 p.m. Alaska time. Hope that you can join in. It's going to be a fun live stream. I hope going to try to keep the gloom and doom out of it and have a little bit of fun today on Friday. All right, so that we can get ready for the weekend. And look at what I just noticed, ladies and gentlemen. Debt to GDP ratio by 2025 will be almost 200%. Any government whose debt to GDP has ever exceeded 90%, it's the point of no return. There is nothing we can do. This system will fail. The question is, will you be prepared?